if we even look at going to Genesis chapter 3, verse 6, where it says, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. You know, it's sometimes overlooked the fact that Adam was there, meaning both of them were there, that the man was there as well as the woman were there. But even before I really dig into that point, I want to recognize that this woman went through a little phase here, right? She said she saw the fruit of the tree was good for food, which means she evaluated it. She saw that it could be eaten. She recognized it, that it could be a part of the dietary intake. Number two, it says it was pleasing to the eye. Not only do I recognize that it's good to be eaten, it even looks good. It looks delicious. Which also led to the third part where it says, and desirable for gaining wisdom. So now at this point, she recognizes full force that what she's about to partake of is going to change the way she thinks. She knows it. She sees it. I've got to tell you, saints, part of my warning to be careful what you feed your family comes from Proverbs chapter 14, verse 1, where it tells us the wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. If truly we are going to be people of wisdom and we're going to build our house in wisdom, we have to make sure we don't abandon God's principles. I know women tend to be very active in a lot of the activist movements, right? And even being part of these activist movements, we are teaching our children and we are training our children the things that we need to fight for and that we need to support. That said, if I look at a lot of throughout history, a lot of the movements that Christian women were a part of and active in, the abolitionist movement against slavery, right? What better way to train your children up than to see you fighting for the rights of people that really you don't owe them anything, but there's such a strong conviction in you for them to be free just as God has made you free. So truly, this is something we want to feed our children. Women have been involved in the civil rights movement. Again, aligning up with the abolitionist movement, but now taking it to the next level. And then on the piggyback of the civil rights movement came the women's rights movement. Your children are watching what you do in this movement. If it's moving after God's righteousness, then I commend you and applaud you. But the minute you find there's some taint in it, that means it taint yours. It taint for you to be involved in, and you need to get away from it. But praise God that even in a lot of these women's rights movements, we now have women's suffrage. But unfortunately, abortion was not taken on. And I'm talking about anti-abortion, fighting against abortion was not taking on. Because at this point now it became a fight more so for the desiring of the flesh so that people could go out and have sex without a committed relationship. And oops, if one should get pregnant, then let's do the obvious thing as not to impede on my lifestyle and my living. Abortion. So now you have the anti-abortionists, which a lot of them are women, are fighting for the baby, who even say if you have the baby, you can give the baby up in adoption, or there are families that cannot have children. Women should be careful in their fighting, that when they're bringing these fights into their home, that these movements are a part of the movement of God. Here, I want to be clear about this. Every movement is not your movement, but make sure that it's a movement of God. That's why I've always been cautious and I've always warned people, don't get involved in BLM. If you see them marching, we don't need to march beside them. We do not need to march beside the LGBTQ plus movement. I know this is not a popular statement today, but this is a Christian statement. because there is an agenda that the LGBTQ plus and additionals, everything else on that, there is an agenda from them which they are not hiding. And it is to normalize the view and the sight and the scene and the relations and everything associated with homosexuality, to normalize it in society, and even to the point of normalizing an alternate sexual family distinction. What are you saying, Pastor? I'm talking about men marrying men and women marrying women, and we are talking about polyamory. All of this stuff was not a part of God's design. But the LGBTQ plus movement wants to normalize these things. If we teach our children that these things are acceptable, saints of God, not only are we defying God's order, but now we're preparing our children to defy God. You are training your children to defy God.